Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the event objectives for the Gems of War Defying Gravity event, in which the Gravitas is added to the game, as well as a bunch of teams for the week. So let's get into that. As far as this troop, it is pretty useless. It is an epic though, so it is going to be 200 each per each arcane tradestone. So if you're looking to pick up a arcane blade tradestone, now is the time. The main things that you'd want to use it for early on in the game are things like Astral Spirit, Dryad, and Knight Coronet. And towards mid-game, you'd want to throw it into Cedric for the gold gain, Princess Elspeth, and Taloka as your main options that you want to focus on. As far as the troop itself, it is useless. It deals damage to an enemy, and if the enemy is a undead or daemon, it'll drain all their mana and curses them. This is excessively situational, and even if you are up against a full team of undead and daemon, it might not even be worth using then. So there's really no point in using this thing. It has a 40% scar reduction, which is a slight redeeming quality of it. However, that's not really much going for it. And overall is pretty much just a troop that you're going to completely ignore after this week. It does give +5 glory this week. However, aside from that, it has no actual purpose beyond that for this particular week. And it'll basically never be used again, unfortunately. Other than that, the Winter Imp will be coming back to the chest now. It just ends up going every 2 months. The chest rotation ends up changing. And of course, the December and January months are the Winter Imp. Winter Imp is actually the strongest of the 6 imps. While all of them are pretty useless, it is technically the strongest, so it is worth considering as an option if you don't currently have it. He's in Glory Gem Guild and VIP chests, though do keep in mind we are getting a new mythic this Friday, so you might want to wait until we get that new mythic before you go open a bunch of those chests if you are looking to get him, since you'll just get him passively in trying to attempt for the new mythic. Other than that, we do have a 10% to all Whitehelm and 10% to all Divine. This is quite a bit of overlap, and the most noteworthy thing that this will have is you can end up using the Priest Hero class for 20% bonus this week. This will help you out with doing Yellow Tower of Doom. This will also help you out for pretty much any team that uses a lot of yellow, as Priest does have a +2 into yellow if you want to utilize that. And with 20% extra stats, it's already a relatively tanky hero class that can be made even tankier for this week. Other than that, if you, as I mentioned, Gravitas does give 5 additional glory when used in PvP. I would not really advise this, as this is a really bad option. The only time you'd ever really bring it out is if you're up against 4 times Firebomb or something excessively easy that you can easily kill out with 3 troops, and the 4th is just you getting 5 additional glory. That is pretty much the only instance I would bother using it with this week, if even doing it for that. So as far as event keys, we of course have a Whitehelm drop table as far as what is in a Whitehelm drop table. If we just go all the way over here to Whitehelm, here's everything that is in it, though do keep in mind anything here that is Hall of Guardians, marked with Hall of Guardians, is not in the event keys. So that includes the Arcane Golem, the Ethereal Sentry, the Gargoyle, and the Silent Sentinel, wherever it is, there it is, and Silent Sentinel. Those are the drops from this kingdom that are not within the drop table. However, every other thing that you see here is indeed in the event key drop table. For the most part, nothing really too useful to go for. Possibly a Mercy if you want to get a few more copies. However, generally if you don't have a copy of her, you're in a position in the game where you can't really even utilize her that well. She's mostly a yellow mana generator with Empower with first turn cleanse, but you don't tend to use her until later of the game, and due to most of the stuff that she synergizes with. The best thing from this kingdom is actually locked behind just opening shards and Hall of Guardians, so you'd probably just be better off doing that. And other than that, Guard's Avatar is here. Guard's Avatar is basically a weaker version of Arwain. It's also a weaker version of Ketris. Ketris is also in Soulforge this week. So this is pretty ignorable, but the only slightly noteworthy thing about this is that he is required, of course, to be able to get Whitehelm to 10+ stars. And as of this week, it is possible to go in 15-star Whitehelm. So if you want to go and get 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15-star Whitehelm, it does technically require Guard's Avatar. However, that's pretty much his only purpose, as there are much better options for him almost always. Either Rowain or Ketris is almost always a better option than Guard's Avatar, unfortunately, due to the fact that he just gets, he just doesn't have as good of a boost ratio. Basically, he has a 2-to-1, which is the same as Rowain's 2 times. So if you lose even one enemy on the opposing team, he does a less armor boost ratio than that of Rowain. And for higher consistency, you just generally use a Ketris if you're looking for a very similar mechanic. So overall, not really much of a purpose, unfortunately, with the Guard's Avatar. So quite an ignorable troop. And the best one of Gargoyle you can, of course, as I mentioned, just simply get from Hall of Guardians. Just go to Hall of Guardians, go to portals, and just open all your portals there until you get a bunch of Gargoyles. And that's how you get that. You might see me using him a bunch on Tuesday events. And of course, he's a pretty good option for that, as well as just any kind of instance where you have a higher attack. But keep in mind, he is not in the event he dropped able to Gargoyle, that is, only within the shards underneath the Hall of Guardians, of course. Other than that, we have ourselves, of course, Tower of Doom this week. It is Yellow Tower of Doom, plays out the same way as always. You're going to want to go and take the rooms that have the more valuable loot. You're going to want to communicate with your guild where all the power, heroism, luck, haste, and fireballs all are. Use some kind of denotion system in order to go and tell your guild what they all are, and you'll be good to go. And just go from there. Also, Starlite wanted me to go and mention that in the description below, I will be posting a reference sheet that he ended up making for Tower of Doom. So if you want to go and keep track of it that way, there's a nice little document that you can end up using. But yeah, there's a lot of third-party tools that you can end up using. You might need to do like a whole video on it, but definitely go check that link if you need some kind of better organization method. Personally, I just like using that little denotion that we just showed there, but of course there are other methods to do so. So definitely check out that link. Other than that, we have ourselves the weekly events. As far as that, we have Hall of Mirrors, or Mirrored Halls, coming out this Tuesday. Of course, this is actually the first time since the event itself where it has been available on a Tuesday event, and it is theoretically the best farming faction in the game, definitely at least second best. It's kind of a toss-up between City of Thieves and Mirrored Halls, so if you wanted to go a little bit extra this time around, you might be wanting to, since it is the best loot that you could pretty much get from any faction, so it's something to consider. Though do keep in mind, if you are maintaining this as a farming faction, if you go any farther than it already is, then it will permanently be increased. So if you're currently farming this faction at level 20, make sure not to do this event, as going any further will permanently increase it. So definitely avoid that. Other than that, as far as the pet rescue this week, we have the Divine Little Pigeon, which is just a Divine bonus. On Thursday, we're going to be having a class event for Priest. I do advise getting it possibly a little bit more upgraded this week, as it does have a 20% bonus, so really easy to use. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a new Mythic this Friday. That new Mythic will be bringing in a interesting triple gem spawn. It's going to be the first triple gem spawn in the game. However, it does seem like it's going to be able to spawn a bunch of the exact same color. Basically what it does is it creates 3 colors. One you get to choose, and the other 2 are random based on your team. And it creates 9 for each instance. And this theoretically means if you use a team of a pure color, you will have a really high chance of creating 18 or even 27 of the same color, which could potentially make it very, very strong. The only real big issue with it is if it happens to roll onto 3 different colors, spawning 9 of 3 different gems is going to be horrifically bad. It's almost always going to miss the extra turn. But if you can end up getting an 18 or 27 gem spawn of the same color, that's going to be really potent. So I'll have to see exactly how it pans out. Seems like it's overall going to be relatively bad, but it could theoretically be one of the best mana generators in the game, particularly for instances like Guild Wars and Tower of Doom, because you'd want to make sure that you stay within pure color when you do it. So for example, you'd want to use most likely a lot of yellow in the case of Tower of Doom this week. So something that you might want to consider for Tower of Doom later this week, once we have it as a Friday option, once it comes into the Glory Gem Guild and VIP chests. So definitely something to consider, and we'll of course be going over it as it ends up launching. Other than that, as far as Soulforge, we have a billion things in Soulforge this week. So as far as Legends and Mythics are concerned, there are several that is worth considering. The main one, I would say, overall, out of all of them, would be Ketris. I was just mentioning Ketris a little bit earlier. He's one of the more consistent damage sources. He's a 2-to-1 boost ratio, and unlike that of a Guard's Avatar, he doesn't have to worry about one single stat. So if they end up tearing all of your armor with something like a Mang or Yasmin, or anything that ends up tearing armor, there's like a billion options these days. Anything that does that, something like a Guard's Avatar, would be completely disabled. However, Ketris the Bull gets to use 3 different stats: his attack, his life, and armor. So if he ends up losing all of his armor, well, he still has additional damage. So you don't really need to worry about it as much. Not to mention, you don't have to boost armor on him. You can also boost life, and you could also boost attack. All of them will do the exact same thing at a 2-to-1 boost ratio. So yeah, overall, way better than a Guard's Avatar. And if you're looking for something similar to that mechanic, you might as well just go Ketris the Bull if you have the spare diamonds for it this week. Other than that, as far as Mythics, Wordbreaker and Ubistet aren't horrible, though definitely lower priority than that of a Ketris. Wordbreaker is mostly just a mass explosion into a AoE damage. Biggest issue with this is it has the second highest mana cost in the game at 30, making it quite a bit of a liability to fill and can be easily mana drained. And other than that, we have Ubestedt. Ubestedt used to be pretty old meta. Ever since it got nerfed, it hasn't really been usable since. It has the capability of double killing, and that's pretty much its whole purpose, is you end up getting a kill and you end up getting automatic additional kill on top of that. It also has a little bit of a Rashka attack and magic gain, which could theoretically be very useful into the future. However, Rashkas are rather underperforming typing, and there aren't too many things underneath that typing that is worth using, and for that reason that attack magic bonus doesn't really work out that well. However, an attack magic bonus every single turn is still a good bonus in and of itself, so it would become more useful as time goes on, but in its current state is just a little above average, but still a good double kill option if nothing else. But overall, Catcher's definitely the way to go. Other than that, obviously really noticeable one here, Yagway. If you do not have Yagway, I highly advise getting it, even if you're pretty low on diamonds. It's one of the few mythics I would one of the few legends that I would consider being worth it. The main three, I would say, are Dragon Soul, Yagway, and Queen Titania. They're about the only three legends in the entire game that I would say are worth spending the 800 diamonds on. Normally, I would not advise actually spending diamonds on legends, as is a little bit of a waste in that you'll have all of them way before you have all the mythics. However, they are extremely good options that could just carry you through the entire game with their really high damage output. Yagway, you'll see me using a lot for bounty hunters. You can even see he's actually the only legend I have medaled so far, currently up to silver. And he hits really hard onto two enemies, and normally gets to hit again because it transforms purple to red, which feeds right back to himself, so he can normally get a double kill just off of that when fighting things that are similar to his stats. And he also gets a life steal every single time he does that, and all the reds he gets to create also give him a life gain, so he has a lot of things going for him. And on top of all that, he gets a little bit of reflect, and he has immune to mana drain. But yeah, really great option to consider. Other than that, as far as Soulforge this week, there is Divine Protector. So if you haven't picked up Divine Protector, it's not as meta as it used to be in the past. However, still a pretty good option. It's just one of those standard, based on a typing, double spawn weapons. Ends up creating red and yellow, and is boosted based on Divine. Of course, with Divine Ishbala, 40% mana start, there's quite a few combinations that you can end up doing with this. It's not the most meta of options it used to be, but still really, really solid. And it is advised to have it as a utility item, particularly later in the game, as there are a lot of really good divines that you end up getting that are mythics and legends. So something to consider. Other than that, Doom Scripture, you're most likely just going to want to pick up through the Doom event itself by paying 500 gems. However, if you want to pick it up this way, you can do so. Do keep in mind that this Doom weapon is relatively bad, similar to all of them that seem to be made of this type. So far as Doom weapons are concerned, the only Doom weapons that are really relevant are the Doom weapons that end up converting all of a certain type into Doom Skulls and then doing full AoE damage. Any Doom weapon that isn't any of those 6 that end up doing that, Doom Convert, are pretty much useless relative to that weapon. So yeah, you could pretty much ignore this from a usefulness perspective. However, you might still just want to get it for completionist sake, just to have another Whitehelm weapon to be able to go and upgrade. So that's everything with that. Let's go take our tribute and just go really briefly over some teams. Of course, all these teams will also be in the description below. But first off, we have ourselves, all the way down here, we have ourselves the first Doom team. This is a pure Divine. This is mostly using stuff that you basically have access to this week. So things like Divine Protector, which you'll be able to go and end up feeding a bunch of Divine since the entire team is Divine. Priest, which will end up giving you a lot of additional yellow with its +2 yellow gain. Furnace not available this week, though it is something I do advise crafting pretty early on in the game. It does have a burn for 3 damage per turn, and it just ends up doing a bunch of mana accumulation, while also being able to do a decent amount of damage off of its explosion into splash damage. Other than that, Divine Ishbala is here for skull spam, mana accumulation on the yellow, the enchant, and because of course the obvious 40% Divine start. And other than that, we have ourselves a Guard's Avatar, which will use all of our armor in order to hit very hard. He also, of course, is one of the few troops that does have a 20% bonus this week. So if you do plan on using him to try to utilize that bonus, you can do so this week if you so choose. Other than that, we have ourselves a more skull-oriented Doom team. I actually use this for Yellow Guild Wars, oddly enough. But this is Gorgotha, Priest, Divine Ishbala, and Quillen. Of course, Divine Ishbala, Quillen, one of the strongest combos in the team at the moment, among one of them, probably top 5 strongest combos really in the game at the moment. But yeah, Divine Ishbala ends up creating transform red to skulls and then green to yellow, and it gets a double enchant. And Quillen gets to convert all purple to red, which synergizes into the red to skulls, and then all brown to skulls as well, while also being able to bless to random allies. So that in combination with a pure divine team ends up working out pretty well. Actually, this isn't pure in that Gurgultha isn't pure. The main reason for Gurgultha here is for the mana accumulation, and also because, well, we're restricted to yellow, but also because we have a 75% skull reduction. So in case we accidentally do mess up some of the skulls, or we get frozen, or some kind of similar thing to that, we still have some skull reduction, so our first slot just won't instantly die. And priest is for the extra 2 yellow, and we'll be able to feed a lot of yellow with a total of +4 yellow with the banner combined with our priest. Being able to do a pretty substantial amount of yellow there. Other than that, as far as the next one here, if you need a much cheaper team, this is the absolute cheapest thing you could probably get away with. This is Mang set to Titan, obviously setting it to barrier, so you barrier every brown. Mang you just throw down in order to go and throw it on the Doom, and go and end up getting a bunch of armor gain that will then allow you to one-shot the enemies. Possibly you might want to do it in order of where they appear and start from the top and work all the way you're down, depending on what your attack value is. But after about 2 casts, you should be able to one-shot pretty much everything due to the fact that you just boost ratio off their own armor. Other than that, we have Cockatrice here. This is for mana drain as well as entangle to make sure that you don't end up getting hit by anything. Entangle will make sure they do 0 skull damage, and mana drain will make sure they can't cast. On top of that, it also gets a +1 yellow, which is useful since you're restricted to pure yellow anyways, aside from weapon. Weapon, of course, can be any color in this game mode. Other than that, we have a Destroy X shape Dragonian Monk. This ends up working out pretty well for a lot of board control stuff, though the main reason you use this is for 4 barriers. It also has half mana start, so you can get that up even a little bit quicker, only requiring your 6 mana initially. Other than that, we have ourselves a Herdmaster here. This is mostly just for the cleanse. However, it also has a +1 yellow, and you can end up getting some mana accumulation with it. I wouldn't go too far out of your way with it, but if you end up getting Death Marked off the Doom or anything else that might be annoying, like a Freeze or Entangle, you would likely want to go use that Herdmaster in order to go get it off of you, so you can just end up going through without needing to worry about any kind of status effects. Other than that, we of course have Mirrored Halls this Tuesday, tomorrow. And as far as options that you have for that, as far as pure faction, I would definitely advise building mostly around the Mirrored Queen and the Copycat. This can definitely solo the entire thing. I know we've tried, and it basically came down to that. You could end up going one of each, is what I ended up doing initially. However, the main thing that you want to carry with this Copycat into Mirrored Queen, so whatever way you want to build around that is the main way that you want to go about it. Basically, the Glass Golem here is just to go and tank initially for the very first battle. You're eventually going to get to the point where you're just Copycat and Mirrored Queen. You then go and Copycat your Mirrored Queen to keep making copies of it. And the Mirrored Queen, you just keep hitting onto the enemy, either on whatever the most important thing is to kill, or if you have an empty spot, it can end up getting a summon, and you'd most likely want to target whatever the best summon would end up being for your team into the following battle. So in the second battle, you're going to want to do that into whatever the strongest option is that'd be able to help you win the third battle, either instant kill options or entangle or anything else that might be able to assist in upscaling. And then for the final battle, you're mostly just going to want to keep copying their Mirrored Queens and make sure you always have at least one Copycat on your team. So if you ever feel like you're getting low, you could end up copying the Copycat of the enemy. Gosh, a lot of copies in that phrase. But yeah, as long as your team has at least one Copycat and one Mirrored Queen on your team at any given time, you pretty much auto-win the entirety of the faction. It ends up working out pretty easily since the AI doesn't really function as well. So you can easily just outplay them. Other than that, this kingdom does have, or this faction does have availability to blue, so you can just run Farce Troll into double Truffle into a standard kind of Truffle team. If you don't have the Doomed Glaive, you can end up running a Shagra's Heart here, or any kind of cleanse option. And it is advised to do it with Warden, as this gives you Green Storm at start, and it also gives you Dispel. Dispel is mostly noteworthy because it ends up getting rid of Submerge, and this is good for Gob Truffle since he hits full AoE, and that will do 0 damage if they have Submerge. So easy way to get it off is with any hero class that has a Dispel, and Warden just works best because it has Dispel and Yellow Storm, which ends up assisting the Truffles even more. Other than that, if you want to go and use a more traditional kind of killing instant kill team, of course, Iron Gut still very meta. Mountain Crusher, Apothecary, High King, Iron Gut, and Mirage Queen, due to blue being available, is possible for the faction. So if you want to run that for Mirrored Halls, if you're going to go all the way for the event, it is something else to consider and might end up going quicker than Truffles, or depending on your playstyle, you might want to use this instead of Truffles. So it's something to consider. And other than that, we have ourselves, of course, the class event for Priests this Thursday. As far as that, you can just end up spamming Paladin. You can end up doing this with an armor buff, or go more so the weapon route and end up going something like a Dawnbringer to get a bunch of boost ratio and end up killing them out that way. If you don't have a Dawnbringer, you can simply just go with Mang, or really just about any weapon for the most part. The whole team, if you're going a different weapon, is most likely going to be centered a bit more around the Paladins and the fact that they have a really high damage output. Give them 24 additional armor, their 20% extra bonus this week, and you'll pretty much be one-shotting everything throughout the event. Definitely two-shotting if nothing else. And with all the extra yellow mana, they'll end up feeding very well. If you do end up going the route of primarily focusing on the Paladins more than a Dawnbringer, if you don't have Dawnbringer, do keep in mind that you most likely will want to make your weapon a not yellow so that you can focus on the Paladins. Might even just want to go with something like a Mountain Crusher or any other option that you might want to consider, just because you'd want to mostly focus on the Paladins, and the Mountain Crusher would, of course, be able to mana generate for them. You also don't need to necessarily go Priest if you don't have it leveled yet. You can simply just go something like a Titan and use it for its bury every brown with Mountain Crusher or similar options in order to make sure it doesn't die. And of course, Mang is always a safe option too if you want to go down that route, and it would have no mana conflict with the Paladins and would synergize a little bit with the Paladins, given that they would tear the armor and then you could just easily one-shot afterwards with the Paladin itself. So that is basically everything that I wanted to go over. If you still have any other questions about this event week, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Best of luck with Cyber Monday and finding any deals, and I will catch all of you later. We'll, of course, be streaming tonight as we do every single night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you want to see some Tower of Doom in action. So, yeah, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we do every night right here on the YouTube channel. I'll see you all later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.